So I'm really tasked with setting the stage in this opening session for why we're here, why we're talking about servant leadership and this idea of thriving. You know, what does that look like to create cultures and environments where people thrive? And we're going to weave that in to every session. As you just saw, as I laid out those topics, I hope you can see how we're trying to help people thrive at work. Because I just think that, unfortunately, in this day and age, there are a lot of people who are not thriving at work. They're just making it. And, life is too short to just make it at work. We should be thriving and becoming our best and realizing our full potential at work. And as leaders, it's ultimately our responsibility to help people do just that. So we're going to figure out, how do we do that? What does that look like? What is a thriving culture? What are the characteristics? On the opposite side of that, what is a toxic culture? That's not easy to talk about, but it's something we have to confront. So I'm setting the stage, and I hope to do that well for you and help you see where we're going. So why thriving together? That's the theme of the event, if you haven't picked up on that. I think sometimes individuals can thrive at work. Sometimes leaders can thrive, but they don't bring others along with them to thrive together. And at the end of the day, it's about bringing people together. You saw the image that we use with everybody with their hands in the circle, and I think that's emblematic of togetherness, of team, of unity, of saying we want to bring everyone along for this ride. It's not just about me and what's best for me. It's about helping people thrive together, and that's what we're all about today. And why servant leadership? Well, I hope that by the end of the day, if servant leadership is new to you, or you're still trying to understand, well, how does that differ from other types of leadership, I hope by the end of the day you'll see that servant leadership is the path to creating an environment where people thrive. And in my opinion, it is the best way to lead, the most effective way to lead. And I hope that by the end of the day you see that as well. So let's talk about culture. The culture factor, organizational culture. It's a term we throw around a lot, but we don't always know what it means. I think we know it when we see it, but we don't always know how to put words to it. You know, it's a powerful force. It can be a force for good. It can also be a force in many ways for evil. And for leaders, I think we get it and we say, yeah, culture. We got to be about a culture. And they would say that on the one hand, but they won't do the hard things on the other hand to improve their culture. And part of that is that they just don't know how to get their arms around it. They're like, I'm not sure what to do with this, because it's hard to quantify. It's a little bit mysterious sometimes. In his book, The Advantage, Patrick Lencioni, who many of you have probably heard of, he's written many great books, he talks about organizational health. And he ties that into culture. And he says organizational health is an organization's opportunity for their greatest competitive advantage. It's virtually free. It's largely untapped. But it presents a tremendous opportunity for leaders to take their organization to another level. But what he says is most leaders won't do that. They like to stay over on the quantifiable stuff, the strategy and the finance and the marketing and the processes. You know, that stuff that we can put on paper and we understand it, it's comfortable over there. You see, when we get into organizational health and we talk about relational things, he says that's messy, right? That's messy. And so most leaders go, I'm going to stay over here where it's comfortable. And so what happens as a result? They neglect their culture. And you know, when you neglect it, when you relegate it to an HR function and say, hey, you handle culture, it can have lasting and detrimental effects on your organization. When a leader abdicates that and says, oh, that's not my responsibility, I've got other things to do. But when harnessed properly, culture can unleash potential, increase morale, and foster employee engagement in a powerful way. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Gallup. They do this annual survey of employee engagement. It's one of those surveys that's always really uplifting. Hey, here's our employee engagement survey again. Oh, look, 87% of people are not engaged in their work again, like year after year. It's always right around there. And usually about 50 to 51% are actively disengaged in some way. It's a staggering number, and in many ways it's kind of sad. When we talk about engagement, that's our emotional connection to the work we do. That's when we see the purpose in what we're doing, and we see how we fit into that. And if that's not present, and we don't see how our work connects to a bigger picture and is meaningful, we disengage. We just check out. So then morale declines, productivity declines, service to customers declines, and the list goes on and on. So the culture factor is the differentiator for your team organization. A recent Harvard Business Review article really highlighted this. They really looked at culture and examined it and tried to figure out what are the defining characteristics and why does it even matter? Why do we talk about it? Well, the authors say that when properly aligned with personal values, drives, and needs, culture, again, here's this word unleash, I love that, can unleash tremendous amounts of energy toward a shared purpose and foster an organization's capacity to thrive. There's that word, to thrive, to be their best. I love the word unleash. It's a mental image, right, of just turning people loose and saying, hey, I want you to go out and be your best. The founder of, I believe it's Groupon, he has a great quote on that. He says, hire great people and then just go allow them to be awesome. I love that quote. He's just saying, hey, hire great people and just empower them and turn them loose and create an environment where they can just be great. I mean, isn't that what we all want? I think we would all say we want that. But so many of us don't get it in the work environment. But it doesn't have to be that way. Let me talk to you about a tale of two cultures. So it's really contrasting thriving versus toxic. Now I realize those feel like those are on the extremes, right? The thriving is, man, we're at the pinnacle. And toxic is like, wow, this is really bad. Are we getting ready to close the doors? Or we feel like we are, or we're just in the dumps. And I would say on a continuum, most organizations are somewhere in between. They might be surviving, deficient, unhealthy in some areas. But, again, if the leader says, I've got other things to do, I just can't deal with culture right now, that's going to require me to engage in a lot of relational stuff. I'm going to stay over here in strategy and finance. Culture does not passively get better. You don't just wake up one day and go, boy, our culture's really improved. And I haven't done a thing. This is really great. We wish, right? Because again, as a leader, there are just certain things where we don't want to wade into sometimes. It is just uncomfortable and it's uncertain, and frankly, we probably just have a spirit of fear. So what does that toxic culture look like? Let's just think of that low end of that continuum. Because again, if it left unchecked, we could veer into the toxicity because we're neglecting the culture in a way that we need to be giving it attention and putting effort into. And so when you think about a toxic culture, let me just give you some descriptions. It's dark with negative energy. It's very formal, over friendly. There's an overemphasis on titles, policies, procedures. There's a lack of transparency. There's a lot of suspicion. Hey, why'd you do that? Wait, I'm not sure about your motives here. What's happening? You know? And so I don't think I can trust you. There's no celebrating. There's no wins. It's just work, 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 move on to the next thing. People are afraid to speak up, to take risks for fear of what might happen if they take a risk and fail. They're afraid to challenge the status quo and say, hey, we've been doing this thing like this for 20 years. Why are we doing it that way? It's not working. They're afraid to do that. There's politics. There's the good old grapevine, and like as we like to say, the water cooler conversation. You know, the water cooler conversation is, so you have a meeting with your team and you proceed to talk about nothing that really matters. You just kind of go through the motions and talk about, you know, the day-to-day things. But there's the elephant in the room that you don't talk about, so then some people proceed to the water cooler and talk about that there. So it's the meeting after the meeting. That's a great sign of a toxic culture when that's happening a lot. Of course, there's extremely low morale, widespread disengagement, high turnover of really good people. You know, good people don't stay in negative, toxic environments. And there's just no community. Let me give you a couple of quotes. I pulled these from sources that reference toxic cultures. I just want to do my job and get out of here. I remember when the company used to notice me and care about me. Now this one here, I was a little shocked at, and I'm not going to mention any company names. I'm not here to do that. You can probably do your own research and find out who they are, but this was a quote that someone posted about this company to another person who was in some sort of online forum, may have been complaining about their work or whatnot, but they said, "You're part of a poisonous environment. Go find a job where you can use your talents for good rather than evil." Man, that's a pretty strong indictment right there. Poisonous. Wow. Yeah, it's a tough one. There's shaming, there's belittling in many cases, and I've talked to some people who have told me about some of their challenges. You know, just kind of public berating, things that are not positive.
Isn't there a lot of blaming also?
Of course, yeah, lots of blaming. Yep, absolutely. So I realize I've painted a really uplifting picture for you right now, and you are just excited. Well, there's good news. We got to start with the bad, because we got to know what's at stake. In an environment like that, I don't see how you sustain that in any productive way. Again, you just kind of survive, and in many ways, it is sad because people are affected in the process in a very negative way. And so there's got to be a better way, right? And that is to pursue a thriving culture. And, you know, a thriving culture is one that is the complete opposite of that. It brings out the best in people. People feel like they matter. Again, they want to come to work. It's enjoyable, it's fulfilling. Yeah, it might be hard, but they're part of something. They're part of a team and a group that is together and says, hey, we're in this together, and we're going to get better together, and we're going to make each other better. Again, going back to Patrick Lencioni's book, he says in a healthy environment, there is low politics, minimal confusion. People know why we're here, what we're doing, where we're going, what my responsibility is, how I fit in. You know, they don't walk around wondering, man, what's going on around here? I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing. What are our goals? There's clarity. There's abundant clarity. And of course, there's high morale and there's high productivity. People are getting things done and they're psyched about coming to work. There's a clear mission and values. People feel part, again, of something and want to contribute. They want to be a part of it. And to contrast what I said earlier, They take the time to celebrate the wins, right? They take the time to celebrate together, to encourage one another. And that does so much to lift the spirits of the people. So there is a better option than the toxic culture. But of course, this is going to take work. This is not something we just flip a switch. Hey, I want that thriving culture. Yeah, give me one of those. I'll take one of those thriving cultures. Can we get that on Monday? Yeah. Man, I wish it were that easy. But you know, anything worth doing in leadership is going to take a lot of hard work. That's why it's leadership. I mean, if it were easy, everyone would do it. And that's where we come in. That's where servant leaders come in and say, you know what? There's a different way to do this. I love this quote from Simon Sinek. If you know Simon Sinek, start with why. Customers will never love a company until the employees love it first. I really love that. And a lot of times we say our customer is number one, right? They're our highest priority. And I get that, of course. But the really great companies say, no, our employees, our team, they probably don't even call them employees, they are team members, are our highest priority because they know that investing in their team is going to lead to great customer service and a great customer service experience. So the great companies take care of their people and create environments where they love coming to work and they love being a part of that organization. So, let me give you a few signs of a thriving culture. I've mentioned a few things already, but just give you a little acrostic here to help give some descriptors to this and what we're after. And then I'm going to give you some examples of some companies who use servant leadership to turn their cultures around, which I love those examples. They're empirical, they're real, they're tangible. It's not just a theory. It's, hey, we were here and we changed the way we lead and treat our people, and now we're here. I mean, it's that explicit. And I can give you a couple of resources to help provide you with some additional insights on that after the talk. So using Thrive as our acrostic, like any good speaker would do, use an acrostic. Of course, there's trust. We talk about trust a lot, right? And sometimes it becomes, trite almost just because we say it so much. But it's that important, right? That there is trust between colleagues, so horizontally in the organization, like I trust my peers, and then vertically, I trust my leaders. I trust their judgment. I trust that they're doing what's best for this organization and for the people. And then that vertical, that goes down too. The leaders have to trust the people. I trust them enough to empower them, right? Not to stand over them and watch everything they do, but to say, no, I hired you because you're the right person for this job, and I'm going to trust you to go do it well. Not stand over you and question everything you do or tell you you can't take risks. No, there's trust there. And that does come with getting the right people, right? I mean, that is a key component here that I hope you'll see as I talk that's woven through, is that culture is absolutely is on the shoulders of the leader to set the tone. But if we don't have the right people on the proverbial bus, to use Jim Collins' language, we're still going to struggle. We're still going to be constantly battling that. So we've got to have the right people in place to build that trust. And trust, again, goes from a predictive, like I trust you to follow through and you're reliable, that type of trust, that predictive trust, to also a relational trust, a vulnerability-based trust, as Lencioni often refers to. And that's this idea that I can be honest with you, right? And I can share and not feel like you're going to hold something against me if I share a vulnerability or a weakness or something I'm struggling with, I'm not sure about. A lot of leaders don't think they can do that. They think they have to have it all together. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. You know that, huh? I got a chuckle. The second for thrive is harmony, right? In a thriving environment, there's harmony, a sense of togetherness, of unity, Doesn't mean we agree on everything. We just know that's never going to happen. But we major on the majors. We keep the big picture, right? And we focus on that. And sometimes we lay aside some personal preferences for the good of the whole. We maintain the peace. And so harmony and unity are absolutely central to a thriving culture. We're all on the same page. We know the mission and the values and why we're here. And we keep that front and center. R, recognition is a sign. Recognition in the sense, you could look at this a couple ways. Just straight out recognition like, hey, I see you. You're part of this team. You're a valuable member. And I recognize your contributions to this team. You know, I just recognize you. Just basic recognition. And then there is the actual taking time to recognize what you've done, to celebrate the wins, to make you feel, frankly, just to feel special in many ways, to say, I really appreciate the effort you put forth on that project. Man, what a success that was. I know you worked so hard on that. And I want to recognize you and maybe even publicly recognize you. You know, they do that in environments that are thriving. Leaders take time to recognize the contributions of their team members. And I was looking at some stats. I don't know the exact study, but it says recognition is the number one thing employees say their manager could give them to inspire them to produce great work. In this study, it's a global study, the number one thing was recognition. Not necessarily even higher pay, promotion, autonomy, or training, but just good old recognition. Hey, just recognize my work. Recognize that I'm here every day and I'm giving my all, and take the time to do that. I think you'll notice on all of these, they generally do not cost any money. Really, which is amazing. And that goes back to what Lencioni's saying. Organizational health is largely free. This isn't like, oh man, I got to go do a budget request for this new project. You know, like we do when we try to hire someone, or we're going to spend money on some conference or training or whatnot. No, this is just, let's just change our actions and our behaviors, which doesn't cost money, but it does take time and effort. And a lot of times, leaders just aren't willing to give that. All right, the next one in Thrive is inspiration. People need to feel like we're going somewhere. And this comes back to vision, right? This sense of, why are we here? What's the big picture? Is it just going through the day-to-day? Or is there something bigger that we're pursuing? And that's what's going to connect with people's hearts. Not only to show them where we're going, but to show them how they fit in and the role that they play. And we all play a different role. And a thriving team, they know their role. That goes back to harmony. I know I'm not you. I don't want your job. This is what I do because I know how my role contributes to the overall success of this organization. So a servant leader's got to come in and inspire the people. Where are we going? Then there's vibrancy. I love that word. It communicates positivity and energy and life. In a toxic culture, there's not life. If something is toxic, it's essentially dying. Something that is thriving is growing, and there is that vibrancy. And so again, I don't know about you, but sometimes I've just been in environments where I could feel the positive energy. That's why culture, again, is like a lot of times you know it when you see it. You can feel it and you experience it, and a vibrancy is a part of that. You can just feel this positivity and this sense that the people there are pumped about the work they're doing, and they know they're there for a reason, and they love serving, and it's great to see. And I'm sure, again, you can think of a few companies like that you've experienced. So vibrancy. And then last but not least, good old-fashioned encouragement. How many people are discouraged by their leaders, talked down to? Everything's negative, right? Encouragement does not take any money. Yes, you could spend some money and encourage someone with a gift or something like that, which would be very nice, but at the end of the day, it's usually a spoken word, a written note. Great story about that. Frank Blake was the former CEO of Home Depot. And he's no longer, I forget when he retired, but he was the CEO for a number of years. And one of the things he did when he came in is he said, I'm going to go out and I'm going to be with the people in the stores. Here's the CEO of a company with, I think, over 300,000 employees. I can't even get my head around that, but so just picture that. And he says, I'm not going to stay at the headquarters and look at spreadsheets and, strategic plans and marketing, whatever. No, I'm going to go be with the people in the stores, put on the awesome orange apron, right, and walk around and see what's going on and get to know people and encourage them and say a positive word to them. And what he committed to doing was writing personal notes to the people that he was meeting, just to encourage them, to thank them for being a part of the team. And if I have it right, I believe he was writing about 100 a week. The CEO of Home Depot is writing 100 personal notes. One person, there's a great story about this, got their letter, it was a handwritten letter, and 8.5 by 11. And she thought it was fake, like that it was pre-printed, so she ran it underwater. And then the ink ran, and oh, that was real. So then she asked for another one. She confessed. It's a great story, But that's a great story that illustrates that we don't think that's real. You know what I mean? Like, oh man, he didn't have time to write me a letter. That's just something that, now you can pre-print letters that look written. And I get that. We're a little jaded in that way and think that. But what a great story. But not only just that connection, but just this idea that someone at that level would take the time to, again, that didn't cost money other than stamping it and mailing it. It took time, though. And time for us is precious. I don't want to take however long it's going to take to write 100 notes. But he did it. And what an impact that had. I mean, a lasting impact. So there you go. We're going to thrive, right? Pretty impressive, I know. Yeah. Yeah. I was working on the formatting, and like I said, a good speaker with an acrostic. But listen, I think we all say, yes, that's what I want. And I would just say, if you're here and you're a leader in a position to affect that, it is your responsibility to pursue this for your team. Some of us aren't in a position to change the culture, but we can still influence it. I might be in a culture and say, hey, I don't really like how my leader's leading us. He or she is not helping us thrive in any of these areas. So, not my responsibility. I'm just going to complain about it. Water cooler conversation. No, I can contribute to this at some level. And so that's where we've got to, as we go through the day together, is just think, how do I fit in to this picture of creating a thriving culture, and how can I contribute to my team? And let me say too, and I meant to say this at the outset, when we were talking about the culture factor, it doesn't care what type of organization you are. If you're a bank, if you're a nonprofit, if you're a school, if you are a church, we are all prone to and very susceptible to falling into a toxic culture, And it's sad to say that. I mean, I just read a recent article of a very, very famous church. And the accusations that were made about this particular church were, again, the word I keep using is sad, because it is sad. If you think of a church environment where we're trying to build people up, give them hope, right? To change their lives. And for people to say the environment was toxic, there was deception, there was hostility. You know, again, a lot of the things I've already said, those were words that were being used in this particular instance. And again, it just goes back to that none of us, no matter where we are immune from this. It can hit any of us, right? Even if we have great intentions and we start down the right path, somewhere along the way, ego takes over, pride, and we start veering off the path. And so I just wanted to make that point that, again, this is applicable to any organization, any team, any environment. Absolutely is. All right, so why servant leadership? Let me give you, here's a quote I like to use when I talk about what servant leadership is. There's lots of ways to define it, but one definition that I've been using is that it's intentionally placing the needs and success of others before your own. It's not neglecting yourself. It's just saying, hey, I want to put others first. I want to put the needs and success of my team and the organization before myself. And Jim Collins highlighted that very well in Good to Great. He talked about level 5 leadership, which is very similar to servant leadership. He talked about a blend of humility and intense professional will. And every leader he described in there, their aspiration was for the organization. It was not about them. In many ways, they were very shy about any limelight, any attention. They wanted to put everything on the organization they were leading. So it was about others. It was not about themselves. So that's the definition I like to use when we frame this idea of servant leadership. It's just looking out for the needs and success of others. So let me tell you briefly about a few turnarounds. You may recognize some of those names. Does everybody recognize those? Yeah. I'm getting some murmurs. So a great book, I always like to reference books. When I teach classes, my students kind of make fun of me because I always bring in a bunch of books, and they're like, we got enough books already. But this is a great book called Servant Leadership in Action, How You Can Achieve Great Relationships and Results. It's edited by Ken Blanchard and Renee Broadwell. I'll leave this out at the end of the session. This is one of the best books on servant leadership I've read because it's got about, I think, 40 or so different authors who've contributed to it. And it talks about the principles of servant leadership and also talks about examples of where servant leadership was applied. And that's what I love. So right here, we've got 4. Datron World Communications. I'll be honest, when I read the story, I was like, man, I don't think I've heard of them. Now, they're massive. So I was surprised I hadn't. But Art Barter was the CEO. He took over the company. It was in a lot of turmoil. They had gone through some very tough times. And he and his wife bought the company, and they said, let's change the culture here. Let's create this servant leadership culture. I mean, that's what they said. It was very specific. We're going to have a servant leadership culture and just change how we do business. They took the company to exponential levels. The financials are off the charts. What's really neat, though, is that they saw the value of servant leadership so much, they actually created a separate entity called the Servant Leadership Institute, where they go around and train other companies on the principles of servant leadership. That is amazing to me. Here's an organization, a corporation that's got its own line of business, and they said, yeah, but we like the servant leadership so much, we want to go help others. And so Art Barter does that. And ironically enough, I'm doing a little research on it. They have an annual conference called the Servant Leadership Conference, and it starts on Sunday. It's in Carlsbad, California, if you want to go. So if you're really jazzed by this, get your plane ticket. But I just love that. I love to see that a corporation said, man, this is so powerful that we're going to implement this. Not only here, but we're going to help other companies do it as well. Very great story. Popeyes. Gotta love your Popeyes, right? Okay. Cheryl Batchelder took Popeyes over as CEO. She's no longer the CEO. They got bought out. But when she took it over, not in good shape. Not in good shape. The chicken might have still been good, but on the inside, they were in trouble. The franchisees, you want to talk about trust? Franchisees and corporate, no trust. And one franchisee explicitly said that to her. We don't trust you. I mean, like, here's the new CEO. It's like, hey, welcome. We don't trust you. You know, and it was bad. So she came in with her team and said, how are we going to lead this organization? Said, we're going to serve the people well. And who are we going to serve? Yeah. They focused on the employees and specifically the franchisees and said, we're going to build that relationship because they are serving the end user. You know, and so they poured a lot of energy and resources into building a servant-led culture all throughout the organization that emphasized servant leadership principles with the franchisees. And again, the empirical evidence is staggering. Their profitability off the charts, the satisfaction scores between the franchisees and corporate now, again, off the charts. So there's a great case study there. Sorry, you know I got a book. For this book, Dare to Serve. I think there's a new edition. And it's written by Cheryl Batchelder, and it tells the story. So another great resource, How to Drive Superior Results by Serving Others. I love that. And not only does she talk about creating the right environment and the culture, but as she goes on in the book, she talks about how you focus on developing yourself, which is ultimately where we're going with all this. At the end of the day, it's about you and me and how we develop ourselves. WD-40 Company. Again, new leader comes in, culture needs changing, specifically in the area of performance reviews. Anybody love performance reviews? I mean, those will genuinely get you really excited, right? They just said, hey, let's change the way we do this. Let's take a servant leadership approach to how we do performance reviews. I mean, how counterintuitive is that in a massive corporation like WD-40? That's kind of a foreign concept. That's why these things are so powerful. They come in and say, well, why have we always done it this way? Why can't we change it? And that's what a great leader does. Comes in, challenges the status quo, and paints a new vision for where they're going. So they transform their performance review process. And again, results spoke for themselves. And then lastly, Waste Connections. I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of them. Another, again, very large company though. And they had about 40% annual turnover of new people, right? So they'd bring in people and then about 40% every year would turn over. And that was clearly a problem. And it was a result of the culture. They dug deep, they asked hard questions, they peeled back the layers, and they see that at the managerial level, again, lack of trust. Employees say, I cannot have a candid conversation with my manager. That's sad. I can't have a candid conversation. I can't be honest with you. And so again, we've killed trust there. And the CEO is Ron Mittelstadt, and they came in and they said, let's change this culture with servant leadership. And they did that, and they implemented it, and they made it part of the fabric, and their turnover rate went down dramatically. So I won't spend a lot of time on those. I just wanted to give you some real, relevant, recent examples of companies that were using servant leadership to change their culture and to create environments where their people could thrive. It's great to see. It really is. Again, these are all from the corporate world.
I work with Hilton, and we have the lobby. And so you can look all around the world
Mm-hmm.
and constantly look at pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And they can inspire you to cookie cutter a lot of what's going on there.
Yeah.
I find that a lot. I mean, I know a lot of people don't look at it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, why?
Yeah, definitely. So here's a quote from Art Barter. who, again, going back to Datron, he says, when you treat individuals with dignity and respect, you unlock their vast potential. What did we say earlier? Unleash, unlock. It's pulling out potential that's in people simply by just how you treat them. Not, hey, when you give everybody a big raise, although that's nice. But again, he's just saying when you do something as simple as treat individuals with dignity and respect, that's powerful. That's so powerful. So real quick, I'm just going to give you five quick behaviors of servant leaders. So how do we bring this home to us? What do we do as a result of this? How do we lead well? First and foremost, I believe at the center and core is to model humility. Again, you know it when you see it, right? You don't go around announcing how humble you are. That would be a little backwards, right? Yeah, exactly, humble brag. But you know it, and you know it when you see it. And the thing about humility is we can't do a training on humility, right? Come to this workshop, and when you leave, you'll be more humble. I wish that were so. Humility begins in the heart. It's a heart condition. So all we can do is talk about it and illustrate how important it is, but it's central to servant leadership. If I'm going to go to a leader, a type A personality, get stuff done, hard charging, and say, hey, man, you need to put the needs and success of others before your own. What are you talking about, man? You know, that's kind of a foreign idea when you hear it on the surface if you've not been exposed to that. But when we communicate it in a way that they see how by doing that they actually get the success they're really after, they get it. And humility is a heart condition, and it's just saying, hey, you know, I'm not better than you. I might be in a little bit more significant position and have a lot more responsibility, but I'm not better. I'm a human just like you. I can ask for help. I can admit when I'm wrong. I can share the limelight with others. That's humility, man. Hey, you know, it was Dawn who did this, not me. I'm out here and maybe accepting some award, but no, it was her. I mean, she was behind the scenes. That's the humility to say, there's other people involved. This isn't about me. And so I just don't know of a servant leader, a true servant leader who does not have humility. They're inextricably linked. And so all I can say there is that's just a self-examination. And it's a daily battle. I mean, every day I wake up, I want to be self-serving, right? I want to be about me. So I have to consciously say, okay, you know, give me the humility today to be a servant and care about people. And so that's not hard or not easy.
One of the things that limits people to do that is just self-awareness.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
They don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's normally seen by others.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's a good point.
sometimes it shows up like arrogance.
Yep.
It's their ego.
Yep.
But they don't own it, and it's hard
Correct.
to tell somebody or to share that this is how you show up,
That-
because in their mind
that-
they're like, what are you talking about?
It's hard to tell them they're not very humble. Yeah.
And they don't see it. It's like that's how I was trained to be.
I hear you.
And,
Yeah.
It's hard,
Eh,
especially the leadership that
Yeah.
we had over the years.
Yeah.
We kind of trained them to be like that. You're a leader, so you
Yes.
have to look like a leader.
Yes.
And that means
Yes. Thank you for saying that. And that's part of the culture that was created. And so you're exactly right. And hear me say that we can't just lay this at the feet of leaders entirely, because we have created the environments where we don't value humility. So,
Like from
sure.
the perspective of
Yeah.
a lecturer, how do we start in the colleges, universities? How do we teach leadership in those? Because that's where it started, right?
Yeah.
How do we, because you can't change them a lot in the workplace. They're already there. It's like I'm learning what you taught them in school.
Yeah.
Right? So how do we even start there to say the things we told you were about leadership are not that anymore? It's from within.
Yeah.
How do you start that from a school perspective?
Well, that's a tall order. I would say institutionally it's very hard to do it because so many people are biased against this idea of leading from a servant mindset. Although I would say now, because we have more great examples, it's catching on more and more. I think it starts at home, of course. I think it starts there in our schools. I would say it's going to take schools that embrace a servant leadership philosophy. I mean, like here at Palm Beach Atlantic University, we believe in servant leadership, so it's part of our fabric. So I don't know that there's an easy answer. It's a good question. So let me finish these points and then we'll do some questions at the end real quick. It's a great question though. So 2 is to demonstrate authenticity. So there's humility and then authenticity. And again, we've conditioned leaders that they've got to have all the answers. They have to always be right. And again, that is in many ways a result of the environments we've created and the culture we've created. And it doesn't need to be that way. People, they want to follow somebody who's real, not somebody who has all the answers to everything. Because I'm sorry, no one has all the answers. You may think you do, but no one does. And so authenticity is being real with your people, admitting when you're wrong, admitting weakness, just saying, hey, I'm not sure, guys. I don't know. What do you think we should do here? It's engaging your people and just being real with them, not walking into the room every time and saying, well, I know what we need to do, because sometimes you just don't know. And so authenticity, it goes a long way in building a bond and a relationship with your people and having them trust you more, because again, they see that you're real. 3 is to elevate others. It's a mindset. It's saying, I want to value people, I want to develop people, and I want to empower people. When I do those 3 things, great things are going to happen, because I am investing in people. I'm elevating them, raising them, their spirits, letting them know that I believe in them. A lot of times people just need someone to believe in them, and a leader has the power to do that and elevate them. 4th is, what I like to say is to think big. This goes back to the idea of vision. When Cheryl Batchelder came into Popeyes, she used this term. She said, we have to give people a daring destination. It's this idea of we're going to go after something big, and we're going to bring them into this and say, you're part of this, and you're going to help us make this a reality. So that daring destination for them was to turn the company around, to change the culture. And I think people are challenged by that. They want to hear that from their leader, that, hey, we can do something big together. We can go places and make a difference.
There's a balance there, though.
Yeah.
Because as the leaders, we're always visionary,
Mm-hmm.
thinking, we're finding our North Star, we're wanting to
Mm-hmm.
move forward. And then you tell us the staff, and they're just like, hey, we were just here. So there's a balance
Mm-hmm.
of, getting people to have a daring destination, but also recognizing the work that they're doing along the way.
Oh, sure.
I think sometimes leaders go with the attitude and vision of what has to happen, and they forget,
What they're doing already. Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There's an awareness and balance of both.
Yeah. Great point. Yeah, I certainly wouldn't want you to neglect that. What's been done, the work that's already been put in.
You can't even think and aspire until you brought the company along so far,
Mm-hmm.
and it's done on the back of your staff.
For sure. For sure. Yep. And then lastly, I'm just going to keep us moving along to keep us on time, is to take action. So look, I can come in and say, we've got all these great plans, and we're going to pursue this daring destination, this vision. Got to take action. Not only towards the vision, but also the culture. And so that taking action might mean, when I said this earlier, if I'm gonna truly guard the culture and invest in it, it might mean that I get some people off the bus. That's taking action. That's hard. That's really hard. But if I believe in this and I say it's that important and I want to change what we're about and I want to create a culture where we thrive, I have to let people know, hey, if you're not on the bus with this, well, we might have to have a serious conversation about your future, because this is where we're going. And so that takes some very decisive action and again, sometimes some difficult decisions, but it's got to be done. And then lastly, taking action is reinforcing the culture. So again, we don't make this declaration. I don't say, here's our new vision, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to change this culture, and then just keep moving on. It's a daily thing. I have to reinforce it. I have to celebrate it. I have to weave it in to everything we do. I read about one company where their core values, they took them so seriously, and I love this because a lot of times we don't take those seriously. They had these little forms, and it had the values on the top, and if I worked there, if I saw someone living out those values, I would write their name and I would circle the values that they were demonstrating in a particular situation, and then I would write a little note about what they did, and I would give that to the manager or the leader, and then they would go celebrate that, recognize that with that employee. How cool is that? It's a little thing, but it reinforced the culture and said, this is what we're about, and we're going to celebrate this, and we're going to recognize it. So that's where we got to take action day in and day out. So as we wrap up here, let me just say this. Shaping and developing culture, it should be a leader's highest priority. The question really is, will you make it great? Or will you make excuses? I don't have time. We can't get to that. We got other priorities. We can make excuses all day long about our culture. Are we going to do the hard work and take the action that's necessary? And then just bringing this full circle, as I alluded to just a moment ago, it begins with us. At the end of the day, true leadership is not about you. Servant leadership is about others, right? Placing the needs and success of others before your own. However, there's a caveat here. It starts with you. It starts with you saying, hey, I'm going to get better. Not so people can look and give me any type of recognition or praise. No, it's so I can be better for the people that I lead. Because I know that humility and authenticity start with me. So leadership is not about you, but it starts with you. And so that's the charge that I have for us today as we go through these sessions, is to not only think about, how do we apply this to our environment or our team or our organization, but what specific insights can you glean for yourself that will help you get better as a leader so that you can be better for others.